Greetings, everyone. We hope you're doing well. Welcome to today's presentation, Conflict Resolution, Key to NYC Vax Mandate, presented by the Center for Creative Conflict Resolution at the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings. By way of introduction, the presenters on this webinar are myself, Justo Sanchez, serve as the Director of Services at the Center.
Hi, this is Hallie Analik. I'm the Director of Education and Training at the Center.
Both Center for Creative Conflict Resolution is New York City government's central resource for alternative dispute resolution and restorative practices. At the Center, we offer a range of services to support city government and its agencies in preventing and managing conflict in positive ways. We've been invited to present on conflict resolution tools that are helpful when engaging with patrons, specifically around the new mandate requiring proof of COVID-19 vaccination for indoor, entertainment, recreation, dining, and fitness settings. We first want to acknowledge that many of you have already been out there doing the work, making the changes necessary to continue running your businesses in a safe and lawful way. In doing so, I imagine that change and conflict have been an inevitable constant part of the process, and that your experience from a customer or public-facing role have served you well in working with difficult situations. What we plan to do today is offer additional ways to supplement what you have been already doing well. We'll share some simple tools, things we can all do to prevent harmful conflict from happening. We've organized this training in 4 segments. First, we'll begin by exploring what internal resilience you already have and can build upon to better respond to conflict intentionally rather than react. We'll also cover in-the-moment tools. These are the things we can do to prevent conflict from escalating. But when an interaction does escalate, we'll look at options that we can all rely on in the moment to move through and de-escalate the interaction. The common thread that runs throughout all of these segments is treating your safety as the #1 priority. So never hesitate to call 911 for assistance if needed. Moments of conflict are difficult. That might sound like an obvious thing to say, but self-awareness is the key to dealing well with challenging moments and moving through difficult situations in the best ways possible. If you reflect on your own lived experience, you will recognize that as uncomfortable as it is, conflict is a normal part of life. It happens, and whether or not you can show up in the best ways all the time, you do have the capacity to move through it with grace and success. You've done it before, you can do it again. So the first thing we can do when engaging with a conflict situation is self-awareness. The ability to recognize in the moment that the situation at hand has an impact on you. You don't want to ignore that. You want to soothe your trigger state so you can keep your energies focused on resolving the situation in front of you and responding rather than reacting. Your body gives you clues when you are in distress. Often when we are impacted, our heartbeat rises, we get flushed cheeks. Everything seems to be closing in tightly, our muscles clench. Sometimes our vision blurs and we might even experience difficulty breathing. Getting in touch with these physical reactions in your body is the first step to getting out of your trigger state. When you recognize them, here are some things you can do. #1 is take a pause. Recognize the body signs and remember to breathe. You want to slow down and create the space to not react. For me, intentional breathing is the bridge to regulating the system, especially in moments of stress. It's one thing we can all do to help us not respond from a place of fight or flight, but from a place of awareness and self-control. Other things you can do are opening and closing your fingers and toes. This brings awareness into your body. Stand tall, stretch your spine, and make sure you're breathing well. If you need, focus on the breaths you're taking in and out. Sometimes we just need to step away, clear our head, take a drink of water. These are simple actions you can take that will barely be noticed by others, but does the work of moving your blood around, getting air into your system, into the brain, and as a result, relaxing yourself so that you can respond from a place of calm and awareness and not react from a state of stress and uncertainty. I will pass now to you, Hallie.
Thank you, Justo. So Justo shared the importance of starting with self. Now let's talk about prevention, how to approach and communicate with other people in ways that reduce the negative impacts of conflict. The best way to prevent escalation or conflict is to be clear in communication and tone from the start. This may include posting clear signage on your premises or updating your website with clear and simple language about the policy. Take this simple, clear, positive toned approach when you talk to your customers. This is one that uses positive body language, eye contact, keeps in mind our tone, and aims to communicate a sense of warmth and friendliness. Proactively building rapport with customers is another way to prevent conflict. It's easier to work through difficult conversations with people we have a good rapport with. This means introducing yourself, asking customers for their first names, and creating a connection before sharing the new policy information in a clear manner. Lastly, be mindful of the context and situation where these conversations are happening, which is usually in busy and public spaces like entrances. For example, make sure there's visible signage and always remember to take a breath before interactions because with change naturally comes stress. Being prepared for difficult conversations goes a long way to managing and responding well. Recognizing signs of escalation early is another way to prevent a situation from getting out of hand. So common signs of escalation include muscle tension, clenching of the fist or tightening and untightening of the jaw, a sudden change in body language, including eye contact during the conversation, pacing or fidgeting, the rooster stance, the chest protruding out more and the arms moving further away from the body, and disruptive behavior such as yelling, bullying, and actively defying or refusing to comply with rules. Be mindful of your own signs. They often show up in your body before it registers in your brain that conflict's escalated. Again, begin with a self-check and do what's needed to relax your system. Don't forget, you can always walk away from a situation or get someone else to help you if the situation feels overwhelming or that it could get out of hand. So if you noticed, most of the signs in the last slide were nonverbal. Nonverbal communication is usually more impactful than the words we use. In fact, words only make up 7% of the impact our message has. Our tone, the rate at which we speak, our body language, eye contact, how close or far we are from another person while talking to them is much more significant. In other words, it's not what you say, but how you say it. Nonverbal communication cues strengthen a first impression, and impressions are usually formed within the first 4 seconds of contact. Keep in mind the mask factor. You might not be able to see someone's full facial expressions, and your own may not be able to be fully seen. The mask can get in the way of picking up our nonverbal cues. New York is one of the most diverse cities in the world. So especially in New York, it's helpful to remember that communication is culturally relative, meaning based on our cultural shapings and preferences, how people communicate can vary a great deal. For example, in some cultures, people use a lot of hand gestures or speak in animated and expressive tones, while others might communicate the same things less expressively or in quieter ways. Or, eye contact among some is a sign of respect, and among others, it may be seen as aggressive or uninvited. In some cultures, people say exactly what's on their mind, while in others, that could be interpreted as rude. Sometimes a listener is expected to read between the lines. So what's most important is to be aware of differences, to be mindful of ways of communicating, and be open and sensitive to the many ways people will show up. So if the first step is to check your internal reactions, And then do what you can to prevent conflict by making intentional choices ahead of time. There's also some in-the-moment tools of what you can use when conflict does arise. The first one we'd like to share is listen to understand. This is one of the most important tips of engagement and often the one we all tend to gloss over. A person who is expressing themselves strongly or more than once is doing so to be heard or to be understood. So let people know explicitly that you understand them. Let them hear it. This can go a long way in bringing down the temperature of the conversation. Counterintuitively, one of the best ways to de-escalate a tense moment is to engage with the speaker's own experience. So listening to understand means focusing on what the experience of the speaker is and letting them know you understood by reflecting their experience back to them. In this early stage, stay away from debating or offering solutions or sharing your perspective. For example, imagine after sharing the new vaccination policy, a customer came up to you and said, "Are you kidding me with this policy? I used to come in here all the time and you never asked for proof of vaccination. You're going to lose a customer if you keep insisting on enforcing this rule." After taking a breath, one thing you can do is share your understanding of what the speaker is saying. For example, "It sounds like you're upset with this policy, especially because this is different from how things used to work around here. Is that right?" After a person confirms you got it right, there are options. You don't need to end at understanding, but understanding is often critical and helps the conversation progress and de-escalate. So simply put, before you share your ideas or your perspective, make sure people feel that you get what they said, felt, or needed in that moment. And also acknowledge feelings. When you acknowledge someone else's feelings, however unpleasant those feelings are, you can bring down the tone of the conversation. This is because our feelings are always present, and when they go unacknowledged in conflict, they can become more central and urgent. Naming another person's feeling or injecting feeling into your tone serves as an acknowledgement of that person's experience. It can itself be a way to de-escalate a challenging situation and can lead to a more satisfying interaction. Feelings also give us information about what's important to people or what people's underlying motivations and needs are. If we pay attention to those underlying needs, that can be helpful to resolve a difficult exchange. The vaccination policy touches upon the needs people have around freedom, civil liberties, and safety. When we can understand the needs of the other, that's one way of building empathy and connection. And that brings us to our next tool, empathy. Simply put, empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. It's taking a moment to reflect on why they may feel the way they do and why the issue is important to them. Empathizing with someone else verbally can acknowledge and validate their experience, even if it's different from your own. So here's an example to help you build empathy with those that challenge you about the new vax policy. I'd encourage you to reflect without judgment on the following prompts. Why might someone disagree with the vaccination policy? Why might someone not have their vaccination proof on them? How might someone be impacted if they were inconvenienced in this way? And why might someone not want to get vaccinated? I'd imagine that whether you agree with the responses you thought of, you can likely relate on some level to why these things might be important to people. And that's what empathy is. It's not agreeing with what someone is doing, but understanding why they're doing it. Another simple and effective tool to use in the moment is asking questions. We all generally prefer to be asked rather than told something. Sometimes you can simply rephrase things you'd usually say as statements. So for example, if someone is being disrespectful to you, instead of saying, "You can't talk to me like that," try rephrasing it into a question. What would you like me to know? Or phrase questions with permission. Asking for permission and getting someone to say yes can give a moment of pause to a conversation. So instead of saying, "I need to interrupt you to tell you the new vax rules," you can rephrase it. Do you mind if I interrupt? I'd like to make sure you have the right information about how our space operates within the new guidelines. Finally, present options when you can. Instead of saying this is your only option, a reframe could be, well, I can't seat you indoors, I can seat you outside, or book a reservation for you another time with your vax proof. What would you prefer? And here are a few more tools to keep in your back pocket. Silence. Sometimes giving people space to vent can be helpful. And if you have to interrupt, have it be to understand or ask a question rather than tell someone what to do or why they're wrong. Agreement. Agreement is where you can find truth in someone else's statement. This can take away resistance. You're not validating a behavior that you disagree with. You're seeing the truth you can find in what they've said. At minimal, an example could be, I agree that this is a real change from how it used to be. You can also use apologies. Apologies are a demonstration of empathy to someone else's experience. When genuine, it also demonstrates humility and that we're all doing our best. Giving an apology can shift anger that may seem like it's coming towards you, towards the situation, or getting used to the new policy. At the end of our conversations, always remember to disengage well and safely. Ending well means maintaining your composure throughout and keeping in mind that treating others with dignity and respect is the golden rule. Whenever you can, be transparent about the policy and any next steps you have to take. Don't take people's reactions to the policy and the inconvenience personally. Maintain positive body language throughout the interaction. Remember, people can see us even when we stop talking. And most importantly, if you feel unsafe or in danger, it's about disengaging early, getting someone to help you, and in escalated situations, calling emergency services. Here's a summary of our 4 steps and what we've covered so far. Remember, if it's helpful, SPED. Self-check, prevent, engage, and disengage. We'd also like to share some helpful sentences and phrases that you can incorporate to demonstrate some of the engagement skills we spoke about. I'll ask Justo to help me with this. So, first, you can demonstrate listening to understand.
It sounds like you're upset with the policy change, especially since it's different than how things used to be. Did I get that right?
After receiving confirmation, you could acknowledge feelings or empathize.
I get it. This is a new and sudden change that none of us anticipated. I do understand your disappointment.
You can also apologize.
Yes, I'm sorry that this is so frustrating.
And if you haven't already, restate or be clear in your position.
We're required to enforce this policy. Unfortunately, I can't let you in without the proof. But please, the next time you come around, bring your vaccination card and we'll allow you in.
And offer options when you have them.
For now, I can offer you some seats outdoors for dining, or maybe you'd like to check out our menu for a takeout.
And end well.
Thank you for doing your best to be patient through this. You're a regular and valued customer, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure you feel welcome here.
Thanks, Justo. We also would like businesses to be aware that we launched a program a year ago where we offer free mediation services to businesses if they're having ongoing conflicts with neighbors or residents that are unrelated to vaccination status. This program is called MEND NYC, Mediating Establishment and Neighborhood Disputes. For instance, if you're getting a lot of noise complaints or quality of life complaints from a neighboring resident, or if you have an ongoing issue with the neighboring business around sidewalk space or trash, you can reach out to MEND following the links below to find out more. Thank you for your time. We wish you the best of luck and be well.